And we are back for prepping for winter with the Alayne sample chapter. So, as with Aeron, we had not heard from Sansa since A Feast for Crows, so before this update on her in 2015, it had been a 10-year wait. This leaves Sam and Brienne as the only surviving point-of-view characters who did not either get a Dance with Dragons chapter or a sample Winds of Winter chapter. And at least we got some update on Brienne as she appeared at the end of the Jaime story in Dance with Dragons. It's been 12 years of radio silence on what's going on in the Sam story. So Alayne continues the tradition of characters being in unpredictable and surprising circumstances. The reader wasn't expecting Theon or Aeron to be imprisoned, or Arianna to be going on some quest to the Stormlands. When we last left Sansa, she had just arrived at the Gates of the Moon and was being told of her betrothal to Harry the Heir. And now from nowhere, we find the Vale preparing for a tournament. And so let's begin. Alayne. So our title reveals that once again, Sansa is not herself. With Theon, Victarion, Barristan, and Arianna claiming or reclaiming their name, our author seems to be titling stories when characters reach their potential or come into their own. So it may be that Sansa's not quite there yet. That said, there is something a bit different going on with Sansa that is more like Theon's adventures as Reek or Arya's many identities. Somewhere between the Sansa chapter and the first Alayne chapter in A Feast for Crows, Sansa stops thinking of herself as Sansa and starts thinking of herself as Alayne, as Littlefinger commanded her to do. Now, in Alayne 1 and 2, A Feast for Crows, she still thinks of Sansa as a sort of third-person character that she used to be, but here in this sample chapter, the transformation is near complete. The name Sansa is quite significantly never mentioned or thought about in this chapter, though there are a couple slip-ups in her head where she refers to Tyrion as her husband and Ned as her father. She was reading her little lord A Tale of the Winged Knight, when Maya Stone came knocking on the door of his bedchamber, clad in boots and riding leathers, and smelling strongly of the stable. So we begin with Sansa reading to Sweetrobin about his favorite hero, the Winged Knight. Now, another thing that is significant about Sansa's mind and her shift in character is how she thinks of Sweetrobin. In the Sansa and First Alayne chapters of A Feast for Crows, she thinks of Robert Arryn as the Little Lord. In Alayne 2, A Feast for Crows, though, Sweetrobin becomes her Little Lord. Now, we don't know yet for sure in what way he is hers. Does Sansa care for him and thus he's hers in that he's dear? Or is he simply a tool of hers to use and control, thus hers in a possessive sense? And it's important to ask whether or not the character of Alayne differs in her sentiments from Sansa. Perhaps Sansa would never wish ill on a child, but we don't really know what this alter ego Alayne is capable of. Now, according to Sansa in A Feast for Crows and this chapter, the Winged Knight is Ser Artys Arryn, Sweetrobin's ancestor who conquered the Vale atop a giant falcon, driving out the Griffin King. For some unknown reason, the world of Ice and Fire goes to great lengths to retcon this, making the Winged Knight a first man legend and turning Ser Artys Arryn into the Falcon Knight. The book then goes on to claim that the two are often confused. I contacted Elio Garcia, the author of The World of Ice and Fire, and he said that this change was George R.R. Martin's decision. I find this retcon particularly irksome as Sansa and Sweetrobin both love stories and would certainly know the history of the Winged Knight inside and out. Ah well. Now, the Mule Girl and Robert Baratheon's bastard, Maya Stone enters, and Alayne notes her boots and riding leathers. Now, this outfit is one that Alayne is a bit focused on in Alayne 2, A Feast for Crows. Sansa first wonders if Littlefinger's crony Lothar Brune prefers Maya in this outfit versus a ladylike outfit, and then she asks Miranda Royce the same question later on. Miranda, although quite interested in the fact that Lothar fancies Maya, dismisses the question saying Lothar probably prefers Maya naked. But Miranda, Lothar, Maya, and those riding leathers open up a whole dizzying can of worms when it comes to scheming. You see, Maya Stone works for and is presumed loyal to the junior Royces at the Gates of the Moon. That is, to Nestor Royce and his daughter Miranda. And quite significantly, Nestor Royce and Miranda were attempting to take over the Vale in the same way as Littlefinger. Nestor was the prime suitor who wanted to marry Lysa back in A Game of Thrones, and he wanted to marry his daughter Miranda to Harry the Heir. Littlefinger did marry Lysa and is trying to marry his daughter Alayne to Harry the Heir. I go into quite a bit of detail on this in my Littlefinger's mistake video, but long story short, the junior Royces, especially Miranda, are not to be trusted, and Miranda likely knows Alayne is Sansa. Among a whole slew of other evidence, Sansa stupidly blurts out Jon Snow's name to Miranda and has no interest in news of a new High Septon despite supposedly being raised by the Faith. And knowledge that Lothar fancies Maya gives the junior Royces a bit of leverage over Littlefinger's crony, Lothar Brune. And so I find it interesting that Maya is looking extra Maya today with her boots and riding leathers. Maya is the mule girl, but there's no need of mule tending these days as the Eyrie is shut for the winter. So why does Maya have these riding leathers on, and why does she smell so strongly of the stables? Now, maybe it's nothing, maybe she was just feeding the mules and riding them around for exercise, but Sansa did ask which way Lothar preferred Maya twice, so it seems important. And the answer to Sansa's repeated question is that Lothar probably likes Maya the way he normally sees her, that is, in riding leathers. So it's notable that Maya is dressed in a way that Lothar prefers on a day that she didn't particularly need to be dressed that way. Maya had straw in her hair and a scowl on her face. That scowl comes from having Michael Redfort near, Alayne knew. So the dizzying connections surrounding Maya do go a bit further. Sansa thinks Maya is scowling because of Michael Redfort, though we should be open to the idea that Maya is scowling for another reason. Perhaps she disapproves of Sansa's control over Sweetrobin. Now, the Maya Stone-Michael Redfort relationship goes all the way back to A Game of Thrones when Cat meets Maya and Maya delusionally believes that she's going to marry Michael. So this relationship is something her author has been thinking about for over 3 decades and is likely going to impact the story. House Redfort, or at least Old Lord Horton Redfort, is currently anti-Littlefinger, and is currently one of the 6 Lords Declarant who demanded that Littlefinger resign as protector of the Vale, but reluctantly gave him 1 year. Now, the leader of the Lords Declarant is Bronzion Royce of the senior branch of House Royce, and there's a connection to House Redfort through Michael. Horton forced Michael to marry Bronzion's daughter Ysilla, and not Maya Stone. Littlefinger actually tells us how he's going to deal with the 6 Lords Declarant. Redfort and Waynwood are old, Hunter will be murdered, Belmore will be bought, Templeton befriended, and thus the senior Royces will be isolated. So Littlefinger is optimistic about House Redfort changing allegiance if old Lord Horton dies. Now, we know very little about the Redfort sons. We know that they were very close with Demeric Bolton and might want revenge against Ramsay. And we know that Michael was squire to Lyn Corbray, Corbray being a Littlefinger crony according to Littlefinger. Knights and squires are almost always considered to be close friends, and we know that Michael is one of the best knights in the Vale and is favored to become part of Sweetrobin's guard, which would make him an effective ward to Littlefinger. So while we don't know the details, it does look like Littlefinger will secure House Redfort's allegiance. That is, unless Maya is a problem. And again, we should stress that the Maya Stone-Michael Redfort relationship has been brewing for a long time. We should ask whether Maya might have some sort of leverage over Michael Redfort. Does Maya now hate Michael, or are they still in love? Perhaps the straw in Maya's hair was from a rendezvous in the stables. Then again, the stables might be pretty crowded today. It's all tough to say, but Maya perhaps has power over both Michael Redfort and Lothar Brune, which means the junior branch of House Royce might have power over Michael Redfort and Lothar Brune. And it should be noted that having power over 2 different men right before a dangerous martial competition seems rather precarious. With emotions flaring, Maya, intentionally or unintentionally, could perhaps instigate a conflict between Lothar and Michael. It will be interesting to see if the two find themselves facing each other in the lists. "Your lordship," Maya informed Lord Robert, "Lady Waynwood's banners have been seen an hour down the road. She will be here soon with your cousin Harry. Will you want to greet them?" Why did she have to mention Harry, Alayne thought. We will never get Sweetrobin out of bed now. So Maya Stone reveals why she has come and the prime action of this chapter. The Waynwoods are coming and need to be greeted. She also mentions that Harry Hardying is with them, an action that sends Sweetrobin into a frightened panic, making it so he cannot greet the Waynwoods. Sansa even questions why Maya would do something like this. So why would Maya do something like this? Well, again, Maya Stone works for Nestor and Miranda, and it's interesting that in the end, it's Miranda who greets the Waynwoods. Of course, the Waynwoods are another of the Lords Declarant, who Littlefinger thinks he can turn, especially if old Anya Waynwood dies. And turning the Waynwoods is of great importance, as they ward Harry the Heir, who Littlefinger has said he wants to get a hold of. Littlefinger went and bought up Waynwood debts and offered a massive amount of money to the Waynwoods for Harry. But it seems that the scheming junior Royces have some other plans with the Waynwoods, which we'll get to later on in the chapter. "Send them away! I never asked them here!" Maya looked nonplussed. No one in the Vale was better at handling a mule, but lordlings were another matter. They were invited, she said uncertainly. For the tourney, I don't... Alayne closed her book. Thank you, Maya. Let me talk with Lord Robert if you would. Relief plain on her face, Maya fled without another word. So here Sweetrobin makes it clear that he never invited Harry Hardying to the tournament, which is something that confuses Maya Stone, as Harry was in fact invited. Of course, Harry shouldn't have been invited. He's not a skilled knight, and he's warded with the Waynwoods. The 8 winners are to be with Sweetrobin for 3 years, which is in conflict with his warding. Plus, Sweetrobin clearly doesn't like him and wouldn't want him as one of his guards. Harry has absolutely no place in the tourney. Of course, it's fairly obvious that Littlefinger did all of the inviting, but this isn't to say that Sweetrobin didn't have his input. Later in the chapter, we find out that the tourney will have 8 winners instead of 7 because Sweetrobin demanded it. And it's likely that Sweetrobin had to affix his seal to the invitations. So it seems Littlefinger went behind Sweetrobin's back and invited Harry anyway, perhaps with a forged invitation. And now much of this information would be apparent to Maya and in turn the junior Royces. If they did not know this already, they now know that Sweetrobin didn't want Harry there, but Littlefinger did. Littlefinger clearly has plans for Harry at the Gates of the Moon. "I hate that Harry," Sweetrobin said when she was gone. "He calls me cousin, but he's just waiting for me to die so he can take the Eyrie. He thinks I don't know, but I do." "Your lordship should not believe such nonsense," Alayne said. "I'm sure Sir Harold loves you well. And if gods are good, he will love me too." Her tummy gave a little flutter. "He doesn't," Lord Robert insisted. "He wants my father's castle, that's all. So he pretends." So fairly shockingly, Sweetrobin reveals that 1, he knows he's dying, 2, he's aware that Harry is the heir, and 3, people are looking forward to his death as the Eyrie goes to Harry. Now this is a pretty huge reveal that Sweetrobin is a lot more aware and knowledgeable than previously shown. The big question is, how does Sweetrobin know? Now there are a few different possibilities, the first being that Lysa told him. I find this option rather unlikely, as Lysa only wanted to comfort Sweetrobin and assure that he was safe. This is contrary to Sansa's later claims that Lysa filled him with fear. If you examine Lysa's actions in A Game of Thrones and A Storm of Swords, she did nothing of the sort. She did everything she could to prevent his seizures, not cause them. Another possibility is that Littlefinger told Sweetrobin this. This also seems highly unlikely, as Littlefinger's plan is to get Harry to come to the Gates of the Moon. Making Sweetrobin hate Harry goes against this plan. So maybe the junior Royces fed Sweetrobin this information to screw with Littlefinger's schemes. This is more likely, but considering Sweetrobin is so open with Alayne, it's pretty darn risky. A simple Randa said X or Maya said Y would reveal their deception. So maybe Sweetrobin is super observant and super intelligent. Maybe, but observant of what exactly? Harry has not been allowed to leave the Waynwood home of Iron Oaks until now. When exactly did Sweetrobin observe Harry calling him cousin and acting fake? If it happened, it would have been in a window of time between when Sweetrobin arrived in the Vale in A Game of Thrones at age 6, and when Sansa arrived in the Vale in A Storm of Swords when Sweetrobin was 8. I mean, for the most part, Sweetrobin's days consist of sleeping, listening to stories, eating meals, playing with his doll, and getting baths. When on earth did Sweetrobin overhear Harry anticipating his death? Now, a final option is that something supernatural is going on, and this is where my money is. Sweetrobin has been taking a telepathic suppressant called Sweet Sleep, and he's been surviving overdoses of it. He's been hearing the singing of supposedly Marillion even after Marillion's death, and I think there's something to Sweetrobin's weirwood throne and his seizures. I go into this a bit in my series The Minds of Wolves and Robins, but long story short, I believe that Sweetrobin is a Greenseer. And the reason he knows Harry is anticipating his death is that someone is sending him messages. Now we should also talk about Sansa's tummy. Sansa's stomach is a frequently reoccurring element in our story. Of course, butterflies in one's stomach is often a metaphorical way to say that someone is anxious about romance. And this is true in Sansa's first chapter in A Game of Thrones. After that, though, Sansa's stomach almost always signals dread and fear. Her stomach acts up when she first meets the Hound, when she anticipates Cersei's actions after Ned's coup, fearing Joffrey, thinking about Dantos' note, fearing Joffrey again, awaiting the Battle of the Blackwater, fearing Joffrey again, getting invited to talk to Olenna Tyrell, fearing Joffrey again, thinking about Tyrion dying, talking with Littlefinger about his plans. The point being, Sansa's tummy fluttering is not a sign of anything good. She is not crushing on Harry, as she hasn't even met him yet. Her stomach is fluttering because she's nervous and feeling dread about scheming. Now I do find it a bit curious that Sweetrobin calls the Eyrie his father's castle. It is in fact Sweetrobin's castle and has been for years now. Perhaps this is nothing but elegant variation in terms. And I will say the Iron Throne and the Seastone Chair are occasionally called one's father's seat rather than one's own seat. Or maybe Sweetrobin officially doesn't take the castle until he comes of age. It's hard to say. The boy clutched the blanket to his pimply chest. "I don't want you to marry him, Alayne. I am the Lord of the Eyrie, and I forbid it." He sounded as if he were about to cry. "You should marry me instead. We could sleep in the same bed every night, and you could read me stories." Now, although Sweetrobin had previously laid claim to Alayne in Alayne II, A Feast for Crows, it was only as his friend. This is the first time we hear about Sweetrobin wanting to marry Alayne. And this is a bit of history repeating itself. Lysa was told she couldn't marry Littlefinger because he wasn't highborn enough, though Littlefinger was secretly manipulating her. And now Lysa's son is being told he can't marry Littlefinger's daughter because she isn't highborn enough, though she is secretly manipulating him. "No man can wed me so long as my dwarf husband still lives somewhere in this world." Queen Cersei had collected the head of a dozen dwarfs, Peter claimed, but none were Tyrion's. So Sansa briefly thinks about one of the most glaring problems with Littlefinger's supposed plan that he told her at the end of A Feast for Crows. Sansa is still married to Tyrion. Unconsummated marriages can only be undone by the High Septon, and he's a loon these days. Now I suppose it's quite possible that Littlefinger could have been lying to Sansa about his plans, and has no interest in marrying Sansa off to Harry the Heir. Still, it seems Littlefinger would eventually want to marry someone to Sansa, probably himself, so at some point Sansa does need to become single. So either 1, Littlefinger is assuming Cersei will kill Tyrion soon, or 2, he actually has a method for killing Tyrion himself. Now Tyrion may seem safe from Littlefinger off on the other side of the world, but I should point out that Tyrion is traveling with an ex-Littlefinger employee, Penny. Penny was originally hired by Littlefinger's crony Oswell Kettleblack, and was one of Littlefinger's jousting dwarves at Joffrey's wedding, and it should be noted that she did already try to kill Tyrion once. "Sweetrobin, you must not say such things. You are the Lord of the Eyrie and Defender of the Vale, and you must wed a highborn lady and father a son to sit in the high hall of House Arryn after you are gone." Robert wiped his nose. "But I want—" She put a finger to his lips. "I know what you want, but it cannot be. I am no fit wife for you. I am bastard born." "I don't care. I love you best of anyone." And so here begins a rather confusing discussion on who a highborn lord or lady is allowed to marry in Westeros and why. Now I will say our author is not exactly consistent on this issue, and perhaps that's the point. History isn't always consistent, and everyone is just making up these rules as they go along. This is most certainly the point he is making with inheritance and kingship, so perhaps it's the same with marriage. Or perhaps Sansa is purposely confusing the issue to mix up Sweetrobin. It's hard to say. The first thing to note about all of this that is helpful is that there is a difference between bastard-born and low-born, but the term base-born is synonymous with both of them and is used all of the time, and it's super confusing. One thing that our author makes a big deal about in the Dunk and Egg stories is that Bloodraven is a noble bastard. That is, he is from 2 very high-born people having a bastard child, and so he's still of an elevated status. And we can, for example, see that a character like Edric Storm is treated very differently from, say, Maya Stone, one being the child of 2 nobles and the other being the child of 1. So not all bastards are created equal. It's also instructive to talk about a house like House Longwaters, a noble house founded by a noble bastard. This shows that a noble bastard can get married, have children, and those children will be noble and trueborn, even highborn, though certainly less noble than the original line. Or we can look at Catelyn's fear of Jon Snow. She didn't fear Jon ever inheriting Winterfell. He is a bastard and can't inherit. But she did fear Jon's children inheriting Winterfell, as they would be trueborn and perhaps even highborn. After all, Cat assumed Jon was a noble bastard, the child of Ned and Ashara Dayne. But let's get back to Alayne and Sweetrobin. What's confusing here is that Sansa is conflating various arguments. She first argues that Sweetrobin must marry a highborn girl to produce a proper heir, and she claims that she is no fit wife because she is bastard-born, and later claims that their children will be base-born. Now this is odd, as a married couple would produce a true-born heir regardless of their social status. Low-born still inherit, it's only a bastard that can't inherit. As long as Sweetrobin and Alayne are married, their children in theory would get the Eyrie. The term baseborn that she uses is synonymous with lowborn and not bastardborn, and the child would be lowborn because Alayne's father is upjumped, her mother is a commoner, and her bastard status would knock the child down a few rungs. Still, lowborn or not, the child should still inherit the Eyrie, at least in theory. What comes next from Sansa is a better argument. "You are such a little fool. Your lord's bannermen will care. Some call my father upjumped and ambitious. If you were to take me to wife, they would say he made you do it, that it was no will of yours. The lord's declarant might take arms against him once again, and he and I should both be put to death." So here is probably the real reason that Sweetrobin and Alayne couldn't marry. It would be unseemly to the other lords. Regardless of the legality of it, the other lords simply wouldn't accept it, as Alayne isn't noble enough. This is roughly the same argument for why Lysa couldn't marry Littlefinger when he was simply the lord of some random finger's fief. Now I will say, it's rather odd that Harry the heir is allowed to marry Alayne without much problem. Granted, Harry is not as highborn as Sweetrobin, but everyone believes he's about to become the Lord of the Vale when Sweetrobin dies. So his betrothal to Alayne does seem a bit off. And that's all for now. We'll continue this with Alayne Part 2.